Welcome back to the Life Well Led podcast. Eric,
Yes.
I read your article that you sent out earlier this week,
Okay.
and I think it was called something like Being the Best Doesn't Make You a Good Leader.
Being the best does not make you a great leader. That's exactly right.
I loved that article.
Well, thank you.
It was so good. So, for those of you who haven't read it, I'll just give a quick summary. Eric, you tell me if I get it right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So essentially what he said was being the best at your job doesn't mean that you're going to be a great leader.
Doesn't guarantee it, right?
Yeah. And that you may have the technical skills for the job, but you need the soft skills, the empathy, the compassion. I think you mentioned curiosity as one that you need in order to be a great leader.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, those are just many good examples of what it takes to be a great leader, and it's encompassing of soft skills. But the point is not that it's all soft skills. It's what you use with your technical expertise. In other words, if you're a great lawyer, that means you have a good credibility to actually lead other lawyers. But to have the soft skills to lead them is what's really needed. The credibility comes from your skill set. It also helps you with your managerial duties as far as understanding the law and understanding the process of your organization and your systems. But the leadership aspect of it is how you get things done when things are challenging and when things are not as simple as a process orientation or a technical fix.
So then after I read this article, it really got me thinking about this difference between management and leadership.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've been on LinkedIn recently and you've seen all the graphics of the manager versus leader, right? And I feel like managers are being really, really demonized.
Oh, they're vilified in every single post that has a caption to it or a picture to it. It's just, if you say the word management, it means that you are the bad guy or the bad girl, and it's not true.
Yeah, it's like a little guy like pointing at you, and you've got like a ball and chain, and they're like trying to tell you what to do, and the leader's like, "Come follow me. Everything's amazing over here." I just feel like it's kind of funny when I see these, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would be really interesting to dive into the difference between management and leadership and how there is truly a role for both and how you can be great at both.
I mean, again, the best way to look at it is when you hear the word manager and leader, they're objective facts. There's nothing that says they're good or bad or right or wrong, right? So there's a connotation to management that's not good. Right?
Right.
It's not really favored right now in terms of social media, in terms of public perception. But when it comes to a leader, it looks great. But you need to have both, and both are skills. The management is a position of authority. You've been authorized by your company, by your family, by your fellow citizens, whatever it might be. You've been given that opportunity to be authorized to do something in exchange for services or skills or what have you. Mm-hmm. So that's needed. Processes is part of management. Opening doors is part of management. Paying bills, whatever it might be, you can think of it. Management is the processes and the systems.
Yeah.
But leadership is not a position. Leadership is a action. If you can subscribe to the fact that leadership is a activity and not a position, then you realize that leadership is just in essence the soft skills that are required to get things done. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So,
okay.
So what I'm hearing is management is the systems. It's the tasks, the processes, planning, controlling in a way, the situation or the project, budget, scheduling, keeping up with the strategic plan, whatever that looks like within your organization or whatever you are managing at this time. But those are really that's the to-do list. It is your job to complete the to-do list as a manager.
Mm-hmm.
And then leadership is, I love how you said that. It's not a position.
Leadership is an activity, not a position. And if anybody can do it, then everybody can do it. But great leaders in the traditional sense are those who are in management, but that's not a guarantee that you have to be in a position of management to be a great leader. Now, having both That's kind of where we go down to it. You have to have both in order to be successful in any organization or social system in some way, shape, or form. It just depends on what it is. In corporate America or a nonprofit, if you are the head of that organization or middle management, doesn't matter. You have to have leadership as well as managerial skills to get there.
And so the leader is the vision, is the direction, getting people bought in, getting people bought into the strategy, inspiring the team to come along with you and make massive change, and really being able to influence and get people to collaborate. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what leaders do. But at the end of the day, in most situations, the leader is also trying to make sure that everybody stays on schedule, that the plan follows on pace, that the tasks are getting done and the processes are in place. So there's this balance of both. How do you play good cop, bad cop at the same time? Part of your job is to still get the management pieces done.
I think the distinction again comes down to number one, as said earlier, that they are positions, or in this case, a position and an activity. So this is an objective fact. It's not the perception that you think. It's just a position and an action. Then it comes down to understanding what type of work do you need to do in order to get the job done. If you are an accountant, a CPA, for example, and you're the head of your accounting firm, the problem that comes across your desk is there was an accounting error. Well, there might be two pieces to that. One of which is the technical part of it, which is the authority to take a look at it as a manager and make the correction as an expert in accounting, or at least, being as well versed in accounting as possible. The leadership part of it is performance. It's part of it is inspiring and understanding that for that person to, if there is that example, how do you not make that mistake again? So there's elements to both there, and it's understanding what type of work is needed. When it comes to, management work, the problem is relatively clear. You either need an expert or you need authorization or authority to do it. The solution is the same way. You know that it's an expert or authority position's work. It's relatively efficient. It's pretty straightforward. You hire an expert and you do it. You hire an accountant to fix the problem. You hire a lawyer to draft the contract. You hire a mechanic to fix the car. The timeline, pretty straightforward. They can give you a timeline for it. And the expectation is you fix it. The attitude is basically confidence and skill. Now, go to the other side for leadership. It's not that clear. Leadership is very kind of murky in the sense that it is not a straightforward linear process. It's about stakeholders. It requires learning for the problem and the solution. You have to experiment with the type of work in order to see if it actually will get done. It's a longer term timeline. You have to have a goal of making progress and use curiosity to understand. That is the difference between leadership and management when it comes down to the work that needs to be done.
I love the example of, you're in the workplace and you are the team lead, the manager, whatever the case may be, and your team starts to fall behind on the task. And that maybe it's one or two people. Maybe there's a conflict between two people that's causing things to go off the rails. The manager in you wants to get things back on track, wants to make sure we're on time and we're on budget. So it would be so simple for a manager to step in to micromanage the situation, or step in and be like, it's fine, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to do it. What would the leader do in this situation?
You still have to have the manager in there in order to make the processes go and the efficiencies work. But that's what if the issue is just straightforward management, you could just get it done. But that's not a long-term solution there. There's still an underlying human element there that's not being done. And that's what the leader needs to do. The leader needs to understand if it is one or two people, but they also have to ask, who else is a part of this situation? What did the leader or the manager in this case have as part of that mess? What was the whole organization's part of the mess? It may be as simple as you just tolerated it for months or years and then it just boiled over into what it is. It might be something even more than you never thought of. But it's asking questions. It's being curious. It requires learning. And then it starts to work with the stakeholders involved, the two people there, whether it was another manager involved, whether it was somebody in the organization that's been watching it. It's getting stakeholders involved to see what kind of collaboration you can come up with and see what actions, experiments actually that you can take to try to get this to move forward towards a solution. And that solution may take months or even a year or longer. But that is what the leader would do, is be curious. They'd learn, they'd get stakeholders involved and act in experiments.
I think where managers get the bad rap, if you will, is because there's delegation involved.
Okay.
There's managing, actually physically overseeing tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times micromanagement comes involved in that. And so it's so easy for managers to let their egos get in the way. It's so easy for them to say, I'm better at this than you, or I can do it better myself, or Susie's not doing this right. Get her off the project.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you get the bad rap. And it comes down to the human aspect of the role. A lot of times when you're in this manager role, it's not the tasks, the processes, the planning, the budgets, the scheduling, all of those pieces that go into it. It's the human aspects that are the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And being a great leader, as you've said, is the human aspect of the job. And they don't teach you that. Most companies don't teach you that. Most of this is you have to kind of learn on your own. You've either picked up the skills along the way, or you've happened to have a really great leader and you try to emulate some of those things. So Eric, what would you suggest for people who really feel like I have never navigated this whole leadership thing? I'm a manager. I got thrown into being a supervisor, a manager, a director, and now all of a sudden I have no idea how to actually deal with the human challenges of what's going on my team.
Yeah, I mean, learning leadership is by doing. It's not something you can sit in a classroom and simply just read the text and walk in and, articulate the materials, right? You have to actually learn by doing. So part of that answer is you do have to kind of figure it out, but part of it is also figuring out how you can get help along the way. So the easy answer is hire a coach, but that would be a little bit too self-serving, wouldn't it? Right? A good mentor is definitely an alternative. Having a mentor and a coach is great too. Having a conversation with the higher ups who have the authority to, or if you have the authority to, invest in yourself, invest in leadership training, and find the right leadership training program where they actually immerse you in the role of leadership in examples, whether it be an example that you bring and you have confidentiality agreements and whatnot to bring it up with that group, or you come up with scenarios in and of itself. There's a great teaching style that the Harvard Kennedy School of Government came up with called case in point learning. And that actually takes adaptive leadership principles, but it takes the room as a leadership example. It takes the room on something as simple as maybe an example case, right? Something that they can use as a way to read through an example, right? And then they start reading the room as, oh, well, those two people started speaking up, so they must be the power players in the rooms, and those people in the back have been nodding their heads, so they must agree, and those people over there have been shaking their heads. So now you're starting to read the human elements in the room as part of what a leadership example would look like. And then you start to work through those problems. That's a great example. It's not necessary, but that is a really great high level example of how you can learn leadership. And the point being is that you learn to lead by doing, but you do need to have, if you want to be better, then invest in yourself and learn what you can actually apply on the job. And then finally, some of it may work, some of it may not. It's understanding that leadership is experimental in nature.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's absolutely experimental, and what works for one person isn't going to work for every person on your team. So again, knowing your team, knowing each individual and where they're coming from and what's important to them matters. But I think even before getting the coaching, the resources in place, I do think that there's one step that's really, really critical.
What's that?
To the process, and that is you defining what type of leader you want to be. Yeah. It is knowing thyself. It is understanding how you want to lead your team. What are different types of leadership styles? There's lots.
Yeah, transformational leader, adaptive leaders, agile leaders. I mean, you name it, you can identify with what you want, but it's ultimately up to you and what's your best style. But there's kind of a framework as far as, general principles and guidelines to go by. It's not the rules. The rules of the road are not you have to abide by these things to the T. It's just understanding the nature in which you have to do it. So if you're more of an introverted type of person, you don't have to be standing on the pedestal on the soapbox giving a speech. Maybe it's more one-on-one. Maybe it's more small group, low tone of volume, low delivery, not low delivery, but like, calm, down to earth delivery versus something that's big and projected. So it just depends. But understanding that there are some guideposts is what really makes it a little easier.
Knowing yourself, knowing what your comfort level is, knowing what type of leader that you want to be and how you best lead is really, really important. And then build upon the skills and then go get the coach to teach you, to work through the mindset stuff and go through the leadership training. But step one is really knowing who you are, what your skills are, what you value, and how you can be a great leader. And yeah, you might find yourself one day thrown, if you're not already, in a management position and you're like, where the heck do I start? Start with you. Start with you. Figure out, okay, I just got dropped all these responsibilities. I've got the technical skills. I know how to do it. How am I going to get the rest of the team on board? It's even harder when you come from, especially if you're promoted within, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you're colleagues with people, you're at the same level, and now you're promoted. And they're like, you mean I got to answer to Amy? What do you mean? Right? I mean, it's changing your mindset. How do you actually want to be perceived as a leader? How do you want to make people feel? What do you want your values to be? And how do you work those into the tasks that you have to get done as a manager?
Know the stories that others will tell about you, and know the stories you tell about yourself, and how you want to change that story if you want to change it.
I love
right?
that. I love that.